Hi, I'm Brent Ozar, and in this session, I'm going to be talking about my 500 level guide to career internals, marketing yourself, building a brand in order to get folks to bring you work. Now, this is not a technical session. If you want to learn about databases or the cloud, you're best off in a different one. Here, I'm going to be specifically talking about marketing yourself, your skills, building up a brand for yourself, and understanding how you go about marketing that brand. Now, in my last session at SQL Bits, for the 300 level session, I talked about picking out the kinds of work that you want people to bring to you, what kinds of pains you want to relieve for them, how you go about building a plan across the span of a year to have, at the end of that year, something like an ebook or a training class that's going to focus specifically on the pains that you try to relieve. By the time that you get to this session, I'm going to assume that you've already made a commitment to do all this. And in this session, we're going to be talking more about how you get your work out to more people, how you design a brand for yourself, then how you understand who you're competing with, how you differentiate yourselves from them, and then how you get other people to believe in 3 key words about your brand. We're going to start with a quiz in the sense that I'm going to show you a brand and I want you to think about 3 words that describe that brand. When you think about, for example, IKEA, what are 2 or 3 words that come to mind? You can just think about them or say them out loud. What about when I say Ferrari or show the prancing horse logo? What comes to mind there? How about Lego? What comes to mind when you hear the brand name Lego or see that brand trademark? How about Uber? Some brands are positive, some brands are negative. Some brands really spend a lot of money trying to advertise and get you to think about particular brands in specific ways. Sometimes you have to work to overcome people's perceptions. Sometimes perceptions work out in your favor. Maybe you think back about Lego and you think about fond childhood memories and it maybe immediately brings back joy. A brand is what a company means to people. Your name is a brand. And brand words, like your name, can describe your product and what it does, like, for example, Lego or Ferrari. Your customer, maybe when I say the brand names Lego, Ferrari, or IKEA, you immediately conjure to mind the kind of people who buy that product. Quality, is it something that's very luxury, like an aspirational product, or is it something that you would just go to the store and go pick up a bunch of them? And then that product's place in the market relative to other products. You know, when you walk into a Burberry store, for example, that you expect a certain kind of product compared to maybe the clothes that are on our back or the clothes that we might buy from somewhere else. Companies spend a whole lot of money trying to figure this out. So they'll often come up with several brand words that describe their brand. If you were going to go through an exercise for Volvo, for example, here are some of the words that you might associate with Volvo and how those words relate to each other. They do whole studies around this. Companies have whole marketing teams, marketing consultancy firms in order to figure out how one brand positions itself to others inside the segment. To do this, since you and I can't afford to hire a branding company to do this, we got to start by thinking about what makes us unique. Me as a person, what differentiates me from everybody else out there who's trying to service the same customers that I'm trying to service? Why would someone come to me? In 2010, I came up with 3 brand words to describe myself. The 3 that I used were technical, approachable, and likable. And I tried to work those 3 into everything that I did. I tried to work them into my social media profiles, the way that I would approach answering questions online. I said, if I'm going to be approachable, I've got to be everywhere. I want to be on every social media platform. I want to get to every single conference that's anywhere out there. I want to host open question and answer settings. I want to be completely available, and I want people to know that they can come talk to me. Now, that ends up backfiring because then you actually have to talk to people. And what I learned over time was that I remembered that I'm not actually someone who wants to talk to a whole lot of people. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't come talk to me at conferences, but I realized that I didn't actually want to center my brand around being approachable 24/7, because then people would actually approach me 24/7 and they would expect me to answer every one of their questions. They'd be like, hey, I'm getting this error. Hey, I want to accomplish this project. And I realized over time that I need to kind of change my brand words, and you probably will too. The three that I use today are pain relieving, independent, and irreverent. Pain relieving because I want to focus on specific business pains: SQL Server performance, slow queries, high CPU utilization, high licensing cost, things that are very much around performance pains that mean something to the business. Independent because I want my customers to see me as a truly independent voice. I don't shill for any particular vendor. I will give them honest advice about whatever infrastructure problem they're facing. I don't favor one hardware vendor. I don't favor one database platform. I'll be the first person to tell you when a SQL Server feature is a bad idea. I'll be the first one to tell you when you should be using a different platform for a particular piece of data. That way, it also helps customers understand with credibility that when I say SQL Server is a good fit for something, it truly is. I'm not just shilling that product like Microsoft's got their hand up my rear end. And then irreverent because I want to be, when I show up to do their engagement, I want them to understand that this joking, goof-off person who wears t-shirts at conferences, who wears, goofy costumes during training classes, this is the same person that you're going to get. I don't take myself too seriously. I'm not reading books online out loud to you. I want to have a little fun with whatever it is that I'm teaching you. I do have to confess that I stole two of those words from my favorite car magazine. Car and Driver has had independence and irreverence on their magazine for homepage for their not homepage, but front page of the magazine for the last couple of decades. And so I really love that magazine. And as I tried to adapt my own brand words over time, I was like, that matches up with what I want. And I would encourage you to do the same thing. Find words that relate to you, and you're probably not going to think of them offhand. You're going to have to hear a whole bunch of other words as inspiration, just as I did with Car and Driver. So I've done this exercise, this branding exercise with a lot of people over the years: bloggers, presenters, community activists, evangelists. And I want to take some of the inspirational words that they'd use, some of the brand words that they use. During one of my free cons that I did, a big event that I used to do for people who were trying to build a community around what they were doing, and I had them go pick out their own brand words. Here are some of the highlights of what those folks picked. And I'll give you a second to read through those and just kind of get an idea for inspiration around stuff you might do. I don't expect you to have that answer today. You shouldn't. You should stew on that for 30 days, 60 days, and think about it. But you should pick 3 words. And when you pick them, you should probably put them up on your monitor. That's what I did, was I would take a little Post-it note, write them out, and tape them to the top of my monitor. And it helped remind me with everything that I did, my online interactions as I would build blog posts, answer Stack Overflow questions, whatever it was. It helped me remember that, oh yeah, I need to make sure that I convey this as I do work with the public and with customers. Because it's not natural. If you're going to try and pick 3 words that you really want to focus on, sure, they should describe yourself, but it's not going to be just immediately intuitively natural. And the more unique and specific you can make it, the easier it is for customers to start connecting the dots. And I say customers as in the public. Even if they're not paying customers of you yet, they're customers with you in the sense when they interact with you. The more unique and specific you can be, for example, independent and irreverent, those are words that other people may not use. Pain relieving are words that you don't hear often out in the industry. The more unique and specific you can be, the easier it is to stand out from the crowd, that no one else is doing those things. Whereas when you use just general words, reliable, trustworthy, dependent, self-driven, can lift 50 pounds or more. These are just general words that everybody uses about everything. And when you use those general, generic, I can solve your problems kind of wording, what you're really saying is that you compete with everybody on the planet. You're saying that you're really no different than everybody else. And if you're no different than anyone else, you are competing with everyone else. And whoever's the cheapest will win. When you're different, when you're unique, you don't compete as much with other folks. And I'll give you a great example of that from a live stream that I recently did. When I did a stream rehearsing for this exact webcast, one of the attendees, Kurt, said, oh, I've collected over, or I spend over $5,000 a year on Lego. I was like, that's such a great example, because if you say, I'm the kind of person who spends $5,000 a year on Lego, immediately the people who love Lego are going to want to have an extended conversation with you. People who used to have Lego from their childhood are going to immediately put a smile on their face and go, wow, I would like to talk to that person to know more about, what they do, what it is that they do today. When you build that kind of deep personal connection quickly, when you can jump a bunch of gaps between you and the person on the other side of the screen, you're less in competition with anyone else, because they'll start to ask specifically for you, and that's what you want. You don't want to be a resume in a big, huge pile. You want to be the person that they reach directly out for first, the one that they would prefer to work with. You want 1,000 true fans. I really love this. Happened literally yesterday, the day before that I recorded this session. Yesterday, someone went on Reddit, and there was a discussion on Reddit about, for some reason, my videos. This person said, I really want to enjoy Brent's streams because he covers a lot of the basics that are easy to miss, but the voices and the soundboard are so off-putting. Because I use a little soundboard. I would show it to you, but I have a short cord. Insert short cord jokes here. I use a little soundboard to have crowd noises, cheering, like arcade game type sounds when I do something good or when I do something bad or something fails. I also make voices for things like Clippy or the SQL Server engine. And I get it. I'm not for everybody. That was also the point. When I started doing training, as I was coming up through the SQL Server world, as I was learning about databases, I was like, oh my God, this stuff is so boring. There are so many sessions and blog posts and books that are just boring. Let me teach you about backup compression. When you check the box for backup compression, your backups are compressed. I'm like, oh my God, I could stab myself in the ear if I have to listen to one more minute of this. I wanted, when I started doing teaching, to give back material that I would have wanted to hear. I don't expect 100% of the audience to like me. I actually expect about 75% of folks to not like me. I'm okay with that. Because if 25% of the audience actually likes me, I can do okay with that. There's this great story about how you really need 1,000 fans who are really interested in your particular work. And one of the replies on Reddit really drove that home for me. Axis MGT says, I understand he's not everyone's flavor. I thoroughly enjoy everything about it. The banter, the voices, the transition. It's nothing new. Brent's crew has always been this way since the office hours do. I'm just thankful that they do it. I've adopted these styles. I get you, but also to find the same reasons that you think negatively of Brent's as reasons that I actually enjoy them over other presenters. That's my goal, is to build up an audience of people who actually love what I do. You're here for that reason. We're doing a technical development session at a SQL Server and Azure Cloud event. Most of the people aren't in this session. Most of the people are elsewhere. Y'all are my people. You're here because for some crazy reason you enjoy me doing this thing. This is a great blog post. Obviously, I didn't write this, but this is by another person about the 1,000 true fans that you need. It's more than a decade old. This is one of the things that really inspired me as I was going through my branding journey. A true fan is defined as a fan that will buy anything that you produce. These diehard fans will drive over 200 miles to see you sing. They will buy the hardback and paperback and Audible versions of your new books. They will purchase your next figurine. Would y'all buy figurine? No, I should probably not even think about that. Now, your own true fans, they're not going to know your 3 words. They're not going to know exactly, for example, y'all never would have known pain relieving, independent, and irreverent. Because I almost never say those words. I do say pains and I do say relief a lot, but I don't refer to myself as like the pain reliever or the independent or the irreverent. I think actions speak louder than words. You've got to walk the walk. Whatever it is that you want to be, that's the brand that you need to convey. Those 3 words need to describe you. They shouldn't describe an aspirational version of you. Like, I've been working on losing weight. It ain't happening. It doesn't make sense for me to use skinny or skinny legend as part of my descriptive terms. Just does not happen. But I need to describe the person that I am now so that people know what to expect. If they know what to expect from me, I don't put on suits. And if I put on a suit, if I showed up in a tie and a webcast, y'all would be like, Brent, are you trying to is there something you want to tell us? Brent, you got a job interview later today? Because people know who you are, you're not going to have to fight that much when management calls you in for a sales call. They're going to already know who you are because they'll have seen you in public. They'll have read your routine, your blog posts, presentations, whatever, and they'll be used to the kind of work that you produce. Your true fans are kind of like your favorite coworkers. They're the people that you're going to be working with on projects for the rest of your life, and they're going to share your interests. They will also aspire to spend $5,000 a year on Lego, for example. These people are your crew. These people are that you'll hang out with and that you'll interact with. I get so excited. This sounds goofy, but I get excited to go do live streams these days because I know the names of people who are going to show up all the time. I know the Surly Devs, the Chris's, the SQL Dev DBA, Greg. I mean, I know a bunch of the names off the top of my head, Tracy today. Because these are my crew. These are the same people that I see all the time, and they're kind of like my favorite coworkers. That's what you want. You don't want 10,000 people who are like, eh. You want 1,000 people who are like, all right, let's do this. So to do this, you want to pick 3 words that help you stand out from others, not that are going to make you different, but that just accurately describe you and describe less people in other audiences. And they need to mean the most to you personally. These words become your elevator pitch. The shorter you can clearly describe who you are, just a few words about things that you're passionate about, the easier it is to introduce yourself to people. This becomes your bio on things like social media feeds. And you probably don't want to use terms like expert because we all have that imposter syndrome. I know for a time there I was working for Request Software as an evangelist, and I had the term SQL Server expert on my business card, and I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm really comfortable with that because I feel like I'm just one page ahead of everybody else in the book. But you know what? So is your competition. All of us out there, we're all just one page ahead of someone else in the manual. The people you're ever so slightly ahead of, those are actually your customers, but also your competition. You are going up against other people, some of which who've never even read Google. Some people suck at Googling. Some people still use Bing. Oh my God. That's how I get in trouble with people. We're all imposters, and the day that you start learning, that's the day. Stop learning. The day that you stop learning is the day you actually get in trouble. You just want to be really clear about what you've actually learned so far. This is what you're documenting and sharing. You're not documenting and sharing things you don't know, unless, of course, you're asking questions on Stack Overflow, which I do too when I get stumped and I hit a wall. And you want to make it clear about the gap between these two, the things that you've learned so far and the things your clients haven't learned yet. That's what they're paying you for. They're paying for you for the things that you know that they don't know yet. Also, your ability to find and learn things quickly. If I'm going to go have somebody build me a Kubernetes cluster, just to pick something, if I'm going to have somebody build me a Kubernetes cluster, the list of things that I don't know about it is epic. I'm not hiring someone who knows all of those things because they may not exist. I'm just hiring someone who has learned more about Kubernetes clusters than I have learned. The Venn diagram on that should be fairly large. A lot of people who know more than I do about Kubernetes. And the fact that they knew anything about it, I'd be like, okay, whatever you don't know, you can pick up by Googling. But I'd much rather have you start from the place that you're at than me start from the place where I'm at, because I suck at that. So now you've got a few brand words and you've got a rough idea of what you've learned so far technically. That's what the 300 level session was about, what pains you're going to relieve. You know the pains you're going to relieve and the 3 brand words that make you different from other people who offer a similar pain relief or focus on similar pains. Now, how do you get the public to believe it and understand it? That's what marketing is. Companies spend boatloads of money every year on marketing, buying advertising in places, picking a brand name, designing their 3 keywords. You don't have that much money, so I'm going to give you the shortcut. You also don't have that much time. Number 1, picking a brand name. Don't be witty. Don't think you're going to do something like SQL Superhero as your handle. Because if you put this in, people are going to eventually know that brand name, but they're going to Google for that, not for you. You want them associating your name with whatever it is that you do. You don't want something funny like this because eventually you're going to hit a roadblock. You're going to change technologies. Maybe it's no longer SQL. Maybe the term superhero isn't going to be funny to you anymore. Instead, put your name on it so that what limited marketing budget that you have, and by budget I always mean time, I don't mean money, the limited budget that you have when you're trying to get the word out about something, it's just your name and the 3 brand words, which makes it much more likely that you're going to succeed. Then you want people to recognize that brand name, your name, and your 3 words, and there are 2 ways you can do it. One, which is what most people think of as marketing, is really advertising. Outbound marketing means throwing all kinds of money down to buy advertising temporarily. Think of this as renting eyeballs. You're going to go drop, and I'm just going to use round numbers, $10,000 or 10,000 euros on an advertisement somewhere, and all of a sudden a bunch of people are going to see that, and maybe they'll pay attention, maybe they won't. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty predisposed to ignore this stuff. Maybe some of them are going to click it. I don't know about you. I've had an ad blocker installed for years, and even when an ad makes it around that isn't blocked, I usually hardly ever click on it. It's just not that interesting. So they're going to put a whole bunch of money onto something, hope and pray that you click. And when you click, their journey's still just beginning. They got to figure out how to convince you to actually read or do whatever it is that they want. You can't afford this. This is super expensive, and you're competing with every tools vendor out there, all the big name companies that are spending millions of dollars a year trying to get their word out. We can't do that. We got to do this. Inbound marketing. Inbound marketing takes a lot more time. What it basically means is that you're going to write content or build videos that people want to see. The one that I started with is blogging. I would write blog posts about the pains that I'd solved in the past. How do you use perfmon? How do you configure a SQL server in VMware? How do you build an always-on availability group? When I wanted to learn how to do something, or when I finished learning how to do something, I would write blog posts about it, and then other people would Google. Google was kind of like my hype man. Google was back there helping get the word out to everybody else, and I never paid anything in terms of advertising because people just search for whatever it is that you're writing. Then, when you're writing this stuff, you want to put your brand image into that content. So, for example, when I talked about that person who has $5,000 worth of Lego per year that they go and buy, when they're building blog posts, every blog post should somehow work Lego into that. Today I'm going to build a table to track my Lego collection. Today I'm going to build a Kubernetes cluster in order to deal with all the people who are coming to view my Lego collection. I'm going to have this table called Lego pieces. Here's how I'm going to store the diagrams. All your sample data would be about Lego. The queries would be about Lego. because this is all part of the process of helping people connect with you. They're not just learning how to build an availability group or how to use table valued parameters. They're also learning about you while they do it. That's why it's so important to have those three brand words up on your monitor as you're working to kind of just give me a reminder of, oh, that's right, I have to tell people that I'm independent. Oh, that's right, I have to tell people that I'm irreverent. And I have to do it with just the right balance. I can't just go and make the whole thing jokes nonstop from start to finish. But I got to remember that if someone's doubting, reading through the post, I got to make sure to convince them that, yes, I am absolutely independent. And here's why I do this particular thing that I do. Where this starts to help out is that when they recognize technical content, even without your name in it, imagine if you were the person who had done 10 blog posts over the last year using Lego as an example. When someone saw a presentation or blog post using Legos as examples, they would think of you. You can't bang those terms home often enough. Obviously, you're not going to use the brand Lego in order to build your reputation alone. It has to be your content that's combined with whatever it is that you're passionate about. Fishing, heavy metal. There are people who build blog posts and videos that you might recognize just from a word of their brand, like heavy metal in the data community, or maybe yo. So getting people to memorize it is all about building your brand image into that content, and then they're going to start learning about your brand continuously. You and I doing all kinds of technical work, the only solution for us is inbound marketing, writing content, because we just simply don't have enough money to go compete with the tool vendors who are buying all that ad space. So what are the products that we can create for inbound marketing? If you like to write, you can do blog posts, write white papers and books. I've done all of this stuff, and I think that all of it is good to varying extents. I like to be all over the place. I like to do all of this stuff. But when you're just getting started out, like we talked about in the 300-level session, 300-level career internals guide, you only have so many hours in the day. You're probably going to want to pick one of these so you can kind of feel like you're getting good at it. Maybe it's writing, maybe it's presentations, maybe it's video, maybe it's doing social media. But just picking one and then really doing it well, because all these have their own gotchas. Like it took me a really long time. I was at like 3 or 4 months before I felt comfortable doing streaming, using streaming tools, multiple camera angles, all that kind of thing. And the whole time that I was working on that, I wasn't getting any better at writing or any better at presentations. So I'm going to pick one of these that I'm going to bet the farm on early on. And then as I'm building it, I got to make sure that the stuff that I build has my brand words conveyed, but not necessarily the brand words specifically in it. Just because you've got 3 words doesn't mean that those are the 3 words you have to use. But when you craft things like your social media profiles, like if I look at my Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever, I've got to make it bring to mind those 3 brand words in some creative way. Whether I'm talking about stories about my experiences, I talk about travel all the time. I love traveling. It's absolutely wonderful. I don't want to just travel for work. I want to go travel for fun, take pictures, share videos, etc. So that people identify, oh, that's Brent. He was in Iceland, 6 months ago, whatever. Outbound marketing, when companies buy ads, it's not subtle. It's super in your face. When you open up a fashion magazine or an architecture magazine and you look at the ads, these companies are spending millions of dollars, photography, models, composition, ad space. And when you look at some of these, you're like, oh, this is so over the top. This is ridiculous. Who's actually buying this? Well, it's that they have to jam something in your eyeballs, and it has to be so over the top in order to be effective for you to remember it. Oh, I love the little trick that they did there with the new Camaro and the old Camaro, showing it kind of has some heritage there in style of that. I'm not saying that you have to be that over the top, like take pictures as if you're Sean Connery, jetting in from somewhere with your Louis Vuitton bags. But your inbound marketing can't be simple or can't be subtle either. It needs to deeply convey whatever it is that you're passionate about. As an example, this is one of my early sessions at SQL Bits, one of the first ones that I ever did back when I was working for Quest. That shirt, good night, that haircut, what was this guy thinking? So when I did the session, I'm like, okay, look, I'm going to write a session about performance tuning, but I need it to convey who I am. I don't want to just say, the disk queue length counter is not very important, neither is buffer cache hit ratio. You should be using weight statistics. I wanted to bring it to life with something that, not the entire audience, but the part of the audience that resonated with me would get really excited about. So back then, the thing that I really love, of course, even today, is cars. So I managed to say, well, there are a lot of Formula One drivers who are retiring recently, and they're going to need some things to do with their spare time. So I propose that they start doing SQL Server performance tuning. It has more in common with it than you might think. And I talked about Enzo Ferrari quotes, Colin Chapman quotes, the Stig. And you really immediately get people to recognize, oh, Brent's into cars and he's into SQL Server performance. And the people who are into cars in the audience, that also resonates with them as well. I don't want to build a fake connection. I'm not doing this in order to try to make huge training sales or something. I actually want to meet other people who are into cars too. I don't give a rip if we talk about SQL Server. Let's talk about cars, actually. Let's talk about, Spaghetti DBA on Twitter. I don't really care if he ever tweets about SQL Server. I'm more interested in what he says personally about Formula One racing or motorcycle racing. And he's a person that I have so much in common with. And I don't know the guy, but from Twitter and bumping into him a couple of times at SQL Bits. But I immediately want to follow him and see everything that he's up to because we have things in common that aren't just databases, that are other things as well. So this carries over into how you build, for example, your social media profiles. You want to kind of hammer home what it is that's important to you in a very small elevator pitch. So for example, this is my Twitter profile. And on Twitter, I say, I make Microsoft SQL Server go faster. I love teaching, travel, and laughing. I live in California with my wife, Erica, and my preferred pronouns are he and him. I take that same exact, very short elevator pitch. This is all you need to know about me. This is it. I repeat the same exact thing everywhere that I am on social media, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook. And I want all these profiles to convey the same thing. Here are my brand words that I'm interested in. And with that, I go and craft my social media profiles to do the same thing over and over again. I want to be independent, irreverent, and pain relieving and give people windows into my personal life as I go about doing it. Don't be afraid to repeat this stuff over and over and over again, because even though you think everybody's heard it, nobody's heard it. Can especially tell you from my time doing marketing or in marketing departments at a large company, the people never hear enough. And I'm not saying that they ask for it. I'm saying that you kind of have to gently remind them. For example, if you're the Lego person, you can't do just one blog post with Lego in it per year. All your freaking blog posts should have Lego in them one way or another. That constant repetition is how you build your brand, and you can build it in combination with other companies too. For example, all the people who sponsor conferences, like all the sponsors over at SQL Bits, they're doing inbound marketing too. I don't want to say brand names just in case there's any kind of gotchas with the contracts, but you go through the sponsors, all of them are hiring SQL Server Azure people out in the community to go write blog posts, white papers, do presentations, podcasts, streaming, doing social media tweets. They will pay you to help promote your own material as long as it works in combination with something that they're trying to do. And they're totally okay if it has your brand words in it, because they want your unique product. Your product is the reason that readers are coming to read your stuff. For example, I've done a ton of sponsored webcasts and white papers with companies where they know that if they put my name on it, hey, Brent's got a presentation coming up, the people will come because I'm independent and irreverent, and I help them relieve their pains. They know to follow along with that, and then they'll go see whatever the vendor has to offer in there as well. For me, a big principle with this, if I'm going to get this message out, I can't charge for it. If I'm going to get people to know who I am, I have to give away everything that I do that doesn't involve a direct transaction for the thing that I charge for. You're like, wait, what? Say that you're a coffee shop. If you're a coffee shop, it's really obvious what your product is. Your product's written right up there. That's what people charge for. They walk in and they pay for that. You don't charge them for the electric outlets. You don't charge them to use the bathroom. You don't charge them for the seats. They could get some of that for free. Sometimes people will camp out at coffee shops. I'll give you a great example in America. In America, McDonald's is kind of famous for its restrooms. McDonald's are all over all the major highways, so when you go on a road trip, you'll often stop at McDonald's because they have the cleanest bathrooms around. They don't charge you to use the bathrooms. They don't ask to see your receipt. You can just go right in there, use the bathroom, and then bail right back out because they know that they make a lot of money on their food, and if you go in there and use the restroom, you're probably going to buy some food because you feel guilty or because you're just hungry. As long as you're stopped, you might as well stop there. What's your product? What's the thing that you actually want to charge money for? Most of the time, it's you. If you're trying to get a job, you're trying to get consulting work, the product is your time. Anytime you're on the clock directly face to face with someone, money should change hands. You shouldn't be giving your time away for free, because your time is like the only limited commodity that you have. Your time, you only have so many hours per day, and every time that you're spending that time with someone else is time that you can't spend with your family, with your loved ones, or building more marketing material, building blog posts, scripts, tools, whatever. If you're selling a book or video, you're absolutely charging for that. You charge for that product, but then when you're trying to get a job, the product is you. Examples of things that people gave away that don't make sense intuitively until you think about it. The Martian by Andy Weir. That book, amazing book, and he gave it away for free. Well, he was getting started until he could get a publishing contract and a movie deal and all that. He just gave the book away for free because he knew that so many people loved the book, would get excited about the book, that they would hand it out to other people, and it gradually grew more and more popular over time to the point where he could actually charge for it. Most book authors can't do that. It was a great example of how he got started. Cory Doctorow, same exact thing. This story, Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom, is amazing. It's my favorite sci-fi story. Well, it's a sci-fi story that tells how marketing works, tells how social currency works. It explains how really Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all these things, Twitch, are all really going to build a reputation-based economy over time. That starts to get far out, but the book, you'll see why it's neat. Or you take like the world's biggest operating system, started for free. In the SQL Server community, here are examples of things that people have given away over time, and now they become ubiquitous. They're everywhere. We all use tools like this all the time. They're just a world standard. And if you're going to do, say, for example, maintenance scripts, you go check with Ola. It's the job or the set of scripts that everybody uses out there. If you want to see what queries are running on your server at a given time, you use Atom Mechanics SP Who is active. If you're going to build any kind of PowerShell framework, commandlets type stuff, you go work with the folks over at DBA Tools and so forth. This stuff builds careers. There are people who make their living based on tools like this. But the only reason this stuff's famous is because it's free. If you charge money for any of this stuff, it just kind of dies off immediately. You've got to get that big adoption first in order to get your name out. So if I had to kind of sum up how this session works, the number one thing that I could tell you is that if it can be given away by someone, then it will be given away by someone. Don't think, oh, I got to keep this private because somebody else might give it away for free. If they're going to do it, you should be known as the one who gives it away for free. If there's going to be a blog post on how to do it, if there's going to be a presentation on how to do it, a script on how to do it, you should be the person who gives it away for free, and then you can be famous based on that. From my own SP Blitz, I can tell you firsthand. For my own SP Blitz example, I can tell you firsthand, I have given away that health check stored procedure for, I don't know, like 10, 15 years now. I don't know how many years it's been. And you would think that if I give away a free health check stored procedure that nobody would ever hire me for health checks. I'm doing pretty well. It turns out that a lot of people will run SP Blitz and be like, oh my God, the stuff there's a lot of data on here. I don't know exactly what I should do. Let's just go call the person who wrote it. And it's the same with any framework. If you build some kind of tool, project, framework, presentation, people who hit a wall are probably going to say, let's go hire the person who built this. Now, granted, there's going to be a percentage of the audience who take the tool that you built and they run with it. People tell me all the time, Brent, thanks for building SP Blitz. I use it with my consulting clients. I basically run SP Blitz on their servers. I give them a health check report. I charge them money for it, and everybody wins. And I'm like, great, because if I don't do it, somebody else is gonna. Glenberry's diagnostic scripts. If SP Blitz didn't exist, Glenberry's diagnostic scripts would be the tool that you use to go run against a server, build out a health check report, and put it out somewhere. But if you're known for it, just as I make a good living based on the top of the first responder kit scripts, Glenn, I'm sure, makes a good living on that as well. If somebody can make a good living by giving the stuff away, why not let it be you? So give your stuff away for free as you work and design a one-year plan like we talked about in the 300 level session. Build yourself out a one-year plan so that at the end of that 1 year, you package together everything that you know and you're selling it as a training workshop, an ebook, an in-person consulting engagement or online consulting engagement. Everything that I talked about during this session, it's all available at brentozar.com/go/500. Slide deck, all of the resources, and of course, yes, it's free. You get where I'm going with that. I don't want your email address either. And there's way more in there in terms of the books that I recommend in order. These are my favorite books to get up to speed on how you can be productive quickly, how you can ship products, how you can build an ebook, build a presentation class, things like that. Just all across the board, all kinds of interesting ways. Clue Train Manifesto, I think, is just so incredible about the new way that business is going, how you can start up by yourself and make a living just for yourself. And then that Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom. Sci-fi, as I put it in the very last at the end there, but I find it incredibly thought-provoking. You can also watch all of my bookmarks live as I do them. I use Pinboard, which is an open bookmarking service. So as I bookmark things, they immediately go out live under the browser. You can even get an RSS feed for my bookmarks. So as soon as I bookmark something, it pops up in your RSS feed. They're all tagged by different tags like architecture, dream home, cars, stereo, whatever. I've got some of the tags that I would recommend checking out. Those are ones that are the most relevant to this particular session. And then last is a list of people who did the same kinds of things that I do and shared their journey along the way. Jonathan Stark teaches you how to build a productized service, how to turn what you know into a flat rate consulting engagement, like way better than trying to trade money for time rather than saying I work at a $100 an hour or 100 euros an hour. He teaches you how to build it into a product at a fixed price and explains why that's so important. Steve Cam built nerdfitness.com, but the project I really love of his is called Level Up Your Life, about how to do an epic life quest so that as you start checking off these boxes, after you start hitting achievements, you realize what a change you've made in your life, and you should be proud of the things that you've done over the last couple of years. He helps you achieve that. Several other resources for starting a brand new podcast, training class, startup, software as a service type thing. And then my own professional development blog over at ozar.me. I blog about the non-SQL stuff, starting a business, doing consulting, how you find the right clients, when it's time to fire a client, and so forth. Last thing I'd leave you with is, throughout your journey, whether we're talking about technically, professionally, from a management perspective, when you find yourself at a level that you're happy, where you feel professionally fulfilled, where you feel fulfilled in your career, in your home life, help other people get to where you are. Don't just always look up. It's so tempting to look up all the time and go, oh man, I really want to be Gordon Ramsay, or whoever it is. But also look back to look at the people who are struggling to get where you are. Give them a hand, share everything that you know. And again, if you can do it for free, you probably should. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed the session, and see you around at SQL Bits.